Okay, here we are, the last of the Patreon requested albums that need to be reviewed before we're all caught up. Well, except for the new Death of Vanna, that comes out August 10th, I believe. And we still have albums from Behemoth, Cyanvar, and Offspring that don't officially have release dates yet. Those will probably end up being surprise releases with my luck. Whatever, we're getting closer to the finish line here, is what I'm saying. And at this rate, I'm also looking at getting Patreon rewards back online in August sometime, most likely. I'm still working on that, and I still have some cool new rewards and special stuff lined up, so I'm really looking forward to getting that all unveiled. Stay tuned, guys. I'll have more Patreon updates here coming down the pipeline fairly soon. But for now, Mark Tremonti has another group? Really? Yeah, forgive my ignorance here, but I honestly didn't know this was a thing. I figured between Alter Bridge and those brief flickering moments where Scott Stapp can lay off the meth for long enough for a Creed reunion, I don't know, I just figured Marky Boy was keeping himself busy enough, but apparently he's got a third band simply called Tremonti. You know, like Dio, Bon Jovi.
Or to a lesser extent, is enough.
So what's the deal here then? What sets this apart from Alter Bridge or shitty Alter Bridge? Well, for one, Tremonti's definitely got a bit more of a metal edge to it. This stuff isn't as top 40 rock chart feeling as some of Alter Bridge's stuff, and it sounds absolutely nothing like Creed, thank God. There's a lot more aggression, power, and thunder to this specific stuff. Tempos are much more violent and stampeding. Tremonti's playing is much more heavy, dominating, and fierce, and the drums are much more keen on using blast beats and tossing triplets and rolls all over the damn place. Overall, there's just that little bit more edge than what you'd normally picture from one of Mark's more other popular bands. If the usual Alter Bridge affair just doesn't have enough oomph for you, this is definitely something that might scratch that itch a bit better. Hell, from the opening few tracks, Bringer of War, From the Sky, and the title track, these guys do not sell you short on the intensity. Even some of the less heavy tracks, like Trust, Trapes, and The First to the Last, a sense of thrust and urgency, even as they mellow things out for accentuation. Really, Tremonti is just a goddamn great ripping hell of a guitarist, and that level of talent and proficiency still shines through even on this project. I mean, that's always been the one consistent thread that's existed pretty much throughout his entire career, right? Even at some of his lowest lows, Tremonti himself has still always been able to shine through, and on his own, yeah, even then, he's not a slouch at all. Hell, Mark even goes as far as to handle lead vocals in this project, and I gotta say, he's not a bad singer at all. I was fairly impressed. Again, if you're one of those people that finds Miles Kennedy's voice to be a little on the yelpy side, oh, come on, don't look at me like that. Hey, I love Miles Kennedy too, but he can totally be yelpy as fuck sometimes, people. When I open their eyes, this might totally be the thing for you to check out. Like, legit, Tremonti's got a pretty okay set of pipes on him. He gets the job done. It makes me wonder why we never heard more of him on those old Creed records. Oh, right. I gotta admit, I kinda like this. It's not reinventing the wheel by any means, but it's a solid collection of good, heavy, guitar-centric rock that people who spun the hell out of Human Clay back in 8th grade will probably get a nice nostalgic sense of good vibes from. It's like listening to those old Creed albums, except with all the shitty parts taken out, and you don't have to hide your device in public out of shame. Hell, if anything, I'd say this maybe feels a little too nostalgic in places. I mean, it's good stuff, but it would have totally been better stuff in like 2008, if you catch my drift. Though, given what rock trends are currently up to, I don't know, maybe it's a good thing they dug their heels into the past so firmly. Not to mention that the lyrics on this album are also a bit on the side, like on Throw Them to the Lions, where Tremonti shouts, "Throw them to the lions, I watch them drown." Someone explained to Mark how lions work. Silly Tremonti, lions are not a liquid. 0 out of 10. And at just over an hour, this thing is way longer than it really needs to be. It's not terribly insufferable or anything. I'm not begging for the damn thing to end, like with some longer albums I've listened to, but around like The First, The Last, or A Lot Like Sin, I usually have my fill with this album. It is what it is. It's not exactly world-defining, and it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea for sure. But for those of you that still throw on your old Creed records every now and again, just because the riffs are too damn tasty to deny, this one's going to fit you like a glove. Even if the Tremonti machine hasn't done much in terms of reprogramming, I'd say it's still a fairly long ways from dying. A dying machine gets 3.5 Paul Reed Smith guitars with birds in the fretboards out of 5. The instrumental band Covet presents a very interesting challenge for me as a reviewer. One of those challenges being keeping the interest of people who immediately checked out after the second and third words of this very review. Instrumental band. God, I knew we'd have to cross this bridge someday. The first instrumental band we get to cover on this show goes to this little math rock trio that's come completely out of nowhere. Oh, well, not completely out of nowhere, mind. Covet is the brainchild of Yvette Young, a guitarist who gained a fair amount of notoriety uploading her compositions to YouTube. And having had the chance to watch some of her work over there, God damn, how why the hell do I even bother? Good God, I will never be this good. Okay, math rock peeps, you know, those of you that have been hounding me constantly to talk about the new Dance Gavin Dance, I'll get to it eventually, I'll try. Yeah, totally. Check this right the fuck out. The playing proficiency of this group cannot even slightly be denied. God, this music is blissful and blisteringly composed. It's complicated on a level that's frankly downright frightening. I think even Tremonti would have one look at some of this tablature and just throw up his hands at it. But what I love about it is that it's not just complicated for complicated's sake. It's not just something thrown together to show off and wave a huge invisible guitar penis around about. The music actually has texture, definition, mapped out arcs and paths, beginnings, middles, and conclusions. Every note, riff, and progression feels like it has purpose and a sense of real immediate direction. And the purpose here is to create a handful of tracks that are just downright orgasmically chill, while still maintaining just that slightest, ever so slight chunk of edge and spice to it. Make no mistake, this stuff is very relaxed. So relaxed, you could argue it's out of my jurisdiction here. When has that ever stopped me? It's not much, admittedly, and those of you that listen to math rock for the crunchier, more crazy moments might not really get your fix out of this, but for those of you that adore the technical side to this genre and want to be just mesmerized by some absolutely intoxicating fretwork, you cannot pass this up. And lordy, I do mean intoxicating too. The soundscape they create can be so entrancing and engulfing. It's basically the closest thing you can get to getting high without actually taking a substance. Hell, this thing should come with a heavy machinery warning. It's all so flowery and rich and vibrant, and at a live, punchy 30 minutes or so, it doesn't overstay its welcome at all, or lull you into too much of a sleep. It's like just the right amount to leave a really nice aftertaste with you. Like, I was really down for this, way more than I originally thought I was gonna be. Though again, oh man, simply by the nature of what it is, man, this is just so not gonna be everyone's thing. Again, this is very math rocky, extremely math rocky. You could almost argue it's too math rocky for its own good. Like, if you're that one person who just cannot stand math rock at all, especially the more modern trend of math rock, this thing's gonna be your kryptonite. This is about as math rock as it can get. And in addition to that, it's, well, a purely instrumental band. And some people just cannot get down with that. For the people that like their music to have something to say, well, how do I recommend an album to you that literally has nothing to say? At least not anything much outside of, hey, come watch my fingers, fuck the shit out of reality. It's very niche, is all I'm saying here. But I know for a fact some of you are either totally into this particular niche or have expressed more than a fleeting interest in this new, proggy, punky, insanely complicated wave of rock music. And for those of you who don't mind getting down on a purely instrumental groove, this is 30 minutes of lucid, dreamy, fretboard annihilating heaven. Effloresce gets 4 insanely complicated tablatures out of 5. Wow, look at that shit. Okay, so remember when I reviewed that one Ninja Sex Party album way back in the day? And, you know, it was way over the top, and it wasn't even really a review so much as it was one giant extended joke about cum that just went on for way too uncomfortably long. You remember that? I mean, yeah, what else was I supposed to do for that album? But it was a comedy band, and I'm sure people will debate me up and down over this one, but look, I'm just of the opinion that you honest to God, in good faith at least, just can't review comedy albums. I don't know, I'm not going to take my usual approach in reviewing this album. I'm actually going to use this as kind of an excuse to chat for a bit about criticism itself and its form and function in the greater scope of things. Strap in, people. I'll try not to make this too shriekingly esoteric. You know, there's this old documentary from about 10 years or so ago called Heckler. It's actually not a very good movie. It's got some super dated stuff on it. A lot of it hasn't necessarily aged well, and most of the film is centered around this really uncomfortable and very ill-advised sort of motif where Jamie Kennedy basically uses it as a platform to try and guilt trip you into thinking he doesn't totally suck balls. But it does have some wonderful interviews from comedians, critics, and other people in the industry about the very act and art of criticism itself. And my boy, Patton Oswalt, has probably one of the best particular lines from this movie.
Comedy and eroticism, you really can't argue. If there's a comedian that I hate, but everyone's laughing at him, then I've lost the argument because he's performing his function. I can't sit there and say, hey, gay guy, you're wrong for getting turned on by that guy because I'm not turned on by him. He goes, well, I have a boner, so you've lost your argument.
Understanding that, do you see my problem with this particular album? I mean, I could legit break down all the ins and outs about it. I could totally lay out my 500-point thesis as to why this album deserves, nay, embodies the score that I have endowed upon it. But if you've got a boner over it, I've lost my arguments. This kind of thing is actually a philosophy I've taken to heart with a lot of my reviews. I mean, musical taste is in many ways a lot like taste in humor, in that it's just so crazy subjective and relative to a person's own general tastes and their own life experiences that have shaped those tastes. Whether a piece of music is technically good or not really just depends on the person who's listening to it, and you could easily say the same thing about whether something is funny or not. Hell, probably even more so. Humor is just not a thing you can make a lot of absolute, definitive statements about. It changes drastically between cultures, and it changes even more drastically between individuals in those cultures. I'm just saying, music itself is a very difficult thing to, quote, review. Comedy is an even more so difficult thing to review. What do you think an album that combines the two does to somebody like me? Am I saying you can't review comedy at all, ever? Well, there's certainly no law against it or anything, and I think that, yes, there is value that can be wrought from at least attempting to review comedy. It can allow us to better understand how comedy affects certain types of people, or it can serve as an interesting reflection of the society it came from, or how it reflects upon a society that it's imposed upon, or it can even serve as an interesting sort of window into where a comedian is at that stage in their career, or that stage of their life. Or it can even serve as an insight into the greater nature of how comedy and humor functions in society, what roles it serves, what things it helps inspire people to do, what restraints and taboos develop around the comedy as the art form and the culture around it develops. But like, that's not what y'all are here for, right? You people are likely watching the show because you want to know if this is something you should buy or listen to. In a weird way, this is almost a consumer advice show? Wow, that's a weird concept to twist my head around. And people, you just cannot write a GameSpot review on whether something's funny or not. You can try, for sure, but no matter how eloquently, knowledgeably, or gracefully you want to word your arguments, especially when it comes to comedy, there is a 6-word sword of Damocles that's going to be hanging over you the whole time. Well, I thought it was funny. I can't fight back against that. Nobody can. I mean, if you want my basic Consumer Reports style review for this album, I mean, okay, did any of the singles or any of the songs you happen to catch in passing make you laugh? Has anything else Psychostick has ever really done in the past made you laugh? Cool, go pick it up. It'll probably do the same thing. It's right up your alley. It's the same general type of humor. They haven't really changed up too much. The instrumentation's still as good as it's always been. I mean, yeah, if it's up your alley, go for it. If not, don't sweat it. And if anybody else has something to say to you about that, well, you've got a boner, so they've lost their argument. You know what I mean? What did I think of the album just coming from my own personal perspective and my own personal taste in humor, etc., for the small, negligible amount that it's worth? It's okay, I guess. I mean, you know, like I said, the guys know how to play. And, you know, the whole random style of humor they implement in a lot of songs. The immature, kind of boyish, kind of giggly ass kind of humor. It can be fun, I guess. These guys can be funny for sure. I don't know, I just prefer, like, more dry wit or like more cleverness in my humor. Or if you are gonna go random, just go completely full-blown ass backwards bananas with it. You know, go full absurdist if you're gonna go random in my book. But again, that's just my particular boner. If you have a boner over what you hear on this album, hey, that's cool. Go enjoy your boner. Hell, I hear these guys put on a hell of a live show too, so hey, go check that out if you can make it. Although if you are gonna see them live, I would recommend, you know, taping down your boner just out of like common courtesy, you know what I mean? Do gets one boner out of another mutually shared boner.
Consensual penis!
Get that disgusting thing off my channel.
They never let them